Next, we have Gene Therriault, who is the Deputy Director for Statewide Energy Policy Development at the Alaska Energy Authority. He has been part of the management team there since August 2012, works closely with the subject matter experts and program administrators there, as well as a member of the Susitna-Watana project team, and represents AEA on the Alaska Intertie Management Committee and supervises the grant section and the rail belt project managers. In his spare time, no. As we know, Gene has been involved on these issues for a long, long time. He was first elected to the Alaska House State of Representatives in 1992 and spent the next 17 years in the state legislature. Following his time in elected office, he's been employed also at the governor's office as senior policy advisor on in-state energy, and as well as a stint at Golden Valley Electric Association. So he's going to go through some of the statewide energy policy developments that have been worked on lately. So please welcome Mr. Gene Therriault.
Thank you, Robert, and we'll see if I can have better success here. What I'd like to do is just go over some of the statutes that are currently Alaska law that really dictate and direct the efforts of AEA with regards to implementation of programs and the expenditures of money that we get from the legislature each year as we move forward and implement the policy, energy-related policy for the state of Alaska. Most of the policy that is in statute was put in statute in 2010. The state had developed a number of projects over the last couple decades, but when the price of energy started to really skyrocket, the legislature quickly became aware that they needed to bring some focus and real direction to the way the programs, the suite of programs that the state had were operated to make sure that we were advancing a coherent energy policy. So here you can see in 2010, there were two major pieces of legislation, Senate Bill 220 and House Bill 306. Leading up to that legislative session, there was a big stakeholder effort. I know Representative Edgman, who's here at the conference, and Representative Millett from Anchorage were very instrumental in gathering a group of people the summer leading up to the 2010 legislative session to really interact and get input on what the energy policy for the state should be. When the legislation got introduced, the House sort of took on one component of it, the Senate took on another so that they could share that load basically through the legislative session, resulting in both of these pieces of legislation being signed into law then the summer of 2010. I'm going to focus first on House Bill 306 that established an energy policy to guide the Alaska legislature, again, the administration, the utilities, conservation groups towards a clear, reliable energy structure in the state of Alaska. House Bill 306 reinforced AEA as the lead entity in the state of Alaska on energy policy. We were instructed to coordinate with other agencies in the state of Alaska, and there have been calls over the past couple of years, seems like it has diminished the last couple of years, that there really needed to be created a Department of Energy. I think, though, when policymakers grappled with it, they realized that there is an aspect of energy in the Department of Natural Resources with regards to oil and gas development, land leases for a hydro site or land leases for a wind site. And they really belong in the Department of Natural Resources for a particular reason. Then we have Alaska Housing Finance that does a lot of the energy efficiency work and have been doing a very good job of that over the years. And so the realization was that parts of these the sort of energy responsibility are scattered in different departments, and they're there for a reason. But what we did need in the state of Alaska was an entity that would be able to call those different parts together, make sure that we have good communication at the upper agency level to make sure that the energy did get the discussion that it warranted. And from time to time, we, AEA, basically are able to call those different people together from those departments to make sure that that discussion and coordination between the agencies take place. That is one of the things that House Bill 306 really directed. And you can see here what I've done on these slides is pull out some of the actual language from the statutes. So you can see the level of specificity that the legislature gave to us. So you see here, it's the policy of the state to coordinate the governmental functions. That is that role that AEA takes on, using one office or agency to pull those efforts together. Now, AEA's overall mission is to reduce the cost of energy in Alaska, and we do that by administering the programs that the legislature has given us and trying to expend the money in the most cost-effective manner to move us towards that goal. You can see AEA is an independent public corporation that was formed by the state of Alaska. We are a sister authority with ADA, the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority. ADA is more of an investment banker. They have monies that they loan out, but they are loans, and they expect to get that money back. The legislature, in this legislation that I'll touch on in just a minute, gave ADA a specific pot of money. It's called the SETS Fund, with which they could use to make loans specifically to encourage economic development by investment in energy infrastructure. On the AEA side of the house, that's where we operate more of the programmatic effort on energy, the grant funds, the Renewable Energy Fund. That's more on the ADA side of the house, although we do make loans also through the Power Project Fund. AEA, we try and focus as much as we can on communities, involve the communities as much as possible in what's being planned and how we implement the programs and actually expend the dollars in the community. Again, trying to involve them, and I know a number of you that have really been at this for a long time. The previous executive director, Steve Hagenson, was real key in cluing in on what the communities, what could be done for the communities, and how could we involve the communities so that as we made energy infrastructure improvements, the communities had buy-in and understood what was going on and how the projects could be operated for the maximum benefit in the community. As we implement the programs, the next couple of slides are just going to highlight some of those programs. We have the bulk fuel and rural power system upgrade programs. Those, again, a lot of the sort of grant funds to work with communities on upgrading their existing infrastructure, trying to squeeze out more energy efficiency, or for every gallon of fuel you burn, how can we generate more power and put it to good use? We achieve a lot of that moving forward with these programs. You can see here completed $304 million of rural bulk fuel and rural power system upgrade projects in conjunction with Denali Commission spending. While as the Denali Commission monies have tapered off, the state has stepped forward and replaced some of those monies going forward, but now we certainly understand that both federal and state sources of money may be getting tighter in the future. You can see here on the last bullet, it's common to see a 30 to 40% increase in fuel efficiency or fuel savings from rural power system upgrades. And I know hearing as we work with the different subregions of the state, we have heard that the different energy coordinators in subregions have realized that from one village to the next, it may be a village of basically the same population, they might even have the same generation equipment, and one community is burning a whole lot more fuel than the other. And we understand the desire to really track down why it is that is happening and figure out how we can lift up or boost up the energy efficiency with regard to the production of power in both communities. Power cost equalization. We have all of these programs that we put in place to try and lower the cost of power, but with regard to electricity in particular, the legislature has created a fund. It is paid for with the earnings out of an endowment, and I'm happy to say that the last year in the calculation mechanism for when a large appropriation was made into that endowment has now kicked in, and the fund actually spins off enough more than enough money to pay for the yearly power cost equalization bill. Previously, that had to be augmented each year with general fund dollars, and so that lent a certain level of uncertainty to the overall level of funding that would be available in that program. You can see here, power cost equalization serves 80,000 people in the state of Alaska, and it's a realization of policymakers that in some instances where you have high infrastructure costs, high operating costs, and very low or relatively low demand. Making the economics of those power systems work is a challenge. And so we do as much as we can to improve the efficiency, drive down the cost with infrastructure investment where possible, but ultimately there is the need for a subsidization of that power. But right now that is specifically with regards to electricity. House Bill 306 also encourages renewable power and alternative energy. And you can see here this language pulled right from that legislation. It is the intent of the legislature that the state shall receive 50% of its electric generation from renewable and alternative sources by the year 2025. So although this, some people say, well, this is just an aspirational goal, it seems to have been really taken to heart by legislators, and through the Renewable Energy Fund and other funding mechanisms, we really are driving forward to try and achieve that goal. Right now in the state of Alaska, off of renewable and alternative energies, about 20 to 23% of the total electric load is generated from those sources on a yearly basis. That's a fairly high percentage, especially with the geographic diversity that we have here in the state of Alaska, but we are moving forward aggressively to try and achieve that ultimate goal. You can see also the second bullet here is it's the intent of the legislature that the state achieve a 15% increase in energy efficiency compared the year 2010 to the year 2020. At AEA, we are working hard with your regional planners, with Alaska Housing Finance Corporation to figure out exactly how we can quantify that and show legislators, are we in fact moving forward and achieving that very aggressive goal. We think we are, but there is a bit of a challenge in tracking down the data so that we can actually show policymakers that we are moving forward on that front. So it was not only a focus on making this source of energy more affordable, but also whatever unit of energy that you have access to, we want you to get the best and highest use of that too. In some aspects, we can only drive the price per unit down to a certain point, but then if we can further reduce your consumption of those units on a yearly basis, that is all accrues to savings to the individual consumer's pocketbook on a yearly basis. The Renewable Energy Grant Fund, again, that is one that was put in place, initially created, I think, in the year 2008 or 2009. It has been renewed, and the target is to try and appropriate $50 million to that fund to be doled out to grants on applications that have been submitted to AEA. They are scored against each other. We put together a prioritized list, and with the amount of money that the legislature gives us each year, we just fund down that prioritized list as far as we can. I think when that fund was put into place, it was a realization on policymakers, individual legislators' part, that the complexity of the requests for energy projects that were coming to their office, they weren't necessarily equipped to actually evaluate the individual projects, the new technology that was being proposed. How were they to score them within their own legislative district? Even more so, how would they score a project in their district compared to the district next door? And so basically they asked AEA to staff up, grow in-house expertise so that we could perform that function. And it seems at this point the policymakers feel fairly comfortable with the way we operate that program. We have an advisory committee that has public members on it. Also 4 legislators are on that make the calls on how we evaluate those projects, how we rank them against each other. And it seems like to this point, the legislature have bought into our prioritization, and there really hasn't been any tinkering with trying to move projects around in the capital project. I think they feel pretty comfortable that we're doing a pretty good job steering the available dollars to those projects where the state consumers get the biggest bang for the buck. Just a slight update on some of these numbers. Actually, we so far have had 277 projects approved, totaling coming up to a total of $250 million. You can see here the capital savings capital budget for the last year was a little over $22 million. So we didn't get the $50 million. We always are hopeful that we'll get that $50 million, but it's a blend of the governor and the legislature working together within the limits of the capital budget to see what the total is that's put into that fund every year. But rest assured, AEA is always advocating for as many dollars into the energy program, but we know that there are competing needs out there, municipal assistance, education funding, and they all come to the legislature in competition for the same dollar sometimes. And back on the energy efficiency side, you can see again that goal of 15% increase and just some of the energy programs that we have regarding energy efficiency. The results of the programs that we have and the limited funding that have gone through those programs to date, you can see over $1.5 million that have gone into projects that is now displacing over 250,000 gallons of diesel each year, or fuel oil. So we get a very good return on those energy efficiency dollars. We actually are going back now on a couple of communities where we had some really deep community-wide energy efficiency action a couple of years back, involving federal agencies, Alaska Housing, real coordinated effort. We want to go back now in some of those communities and make sure that the savings that were immediately achieved of 30 or 40% savings in the community, if any of that was reliant on maintenance of the system, operation of new technical equipment to get those savings, we want to track to see whether, in fact, the community has kept up with that. We believe by doing so, we will gather up the body of data that will show policymakers that of the limited dollars that they have going forward, if they choose to put them into the funds where we actually do the energy efficiency, that we can get a very good return on those invested dollars for the consumers in the state of Alaska. Village Energy Efficiency Program, and I know that David P. with Therriault Chiefs has really been promoting individuals, letting the administration know of the very good results that can be achieved in that program. And that is one, again, where you can see here one of the bullets in 2013, 7 projects received 1.3 or almost $1.4 million. We, again, believe that we can get sizable savings for those investments. We try, again, to work very closely with federal programs, the other state agencies when we go into the community to make sure that we can stretch each one of those dollars as far as possible, because we know the return on that energy efficiency investment is so large and can be very long-term for the community. Now, just wrapping up the final parts of House Bill 306, the one other thing that it did is it did indicate that we were likely to be moving away from a grant-centered energy investment and more into a financing mechanism. And so it pointed out that the Power Project Fund, which is an existing mechanism that the AEA operates, where we have a pool of money, we can loan it out for energy-related infrastructure. We've got an ability to work with the loan applicant with regards to when repayment starts, when interest kicks in, what the interest rate is to try and affect the economic viability of a proposed project. And so this is an area where, unlike ADA in the way that they loan their money out, they need to get those money back, preserve the purchasing power of those loaned out money. On the AEA side with the Power Project Fund, we can be a little bit more generous, but ultimately it is a revolving loan fund, and the money is loaned out. We hope to, at the very least, get back the principal so that we don't have to continue feeding cash into the fund in order to preserve its ability to continue to make loans. But we try as best we can to work with the loan applicants to make sure that the loan is structured in such a way that the project can go forward. But again, I think back in 2010, legislators realized we were likely to be heading into a future where loaned dollars would be a greater part of the capital mix to move projects forward. And here again, just a few of the specifics on the on the Power Project Fund. One of the things interesting, I think, was actually in 2011, what the legislature allowed us to do is when the bulk of the money is loaned out from the PPF, then ADA, that in more of the investment house, they can actually purchase portfolios of investments out of the PPF. They then hold it within their investment portfolio as a long-term investment that brings in a return, and that replenishes the capital in the PPF. That doesn't mean that policymakers are not free to put more general funds in there, but that was a very creative way so that we could blend the abilities of ADA and AEA together to try and make sure that that PPF loan fund could actually replenish itself every once in a while without having to go back to the legislature for general fund dollars. One of the other things that House Bill 306 pointed out is that it encouraged us to do training to make sure that the investment in energy infrastructure, that we had people that could help with the investment, help with the ongoing operations and maintenance of the equipment. And we realize we've come into a greater and greater realization that that is a key component to the cost of energy in your smaller communities. Having the human capital in those communities to make sure that the investment in infrastructure is maintained, is operated in its optimum way so that you get the greatest amount of efficiency of every unit of fuel that you consume in the community is very key. And we know that you struggle with that. As we have been given a new challenge by the legislature this year to plan for energy policy, energy infrastructure in communities long-term, tied to a potential long-term funding stream off of a potential natural gas pipeline. We understand at AEA that a component of what we recommend to policymakers for future energy programs, that there will need to be a component for this training, this ongoing training in your communities, in your utilities, that it can no longer be just, well, in investment in infrastructure, and then the community is on its own to make sure that they get the benefit of the infrastructure. To the best of our ability, we try right now to make sure that we can assist you with training, but we believe part of the direction from the legislature this year was to develop programs, make suggestions to them on a timeline to beef up that effort going forward. These are a number of the entities that we partner with the training. You can see and the programs that we operate: the bulk fuel operator training, the power plant operator training, advanced power plant operator training. We do training on PCE, the keeping of the records. When one of the communities falls out of compliance with PCE, we've got specialists at AEA that work with the utility to get you back into compliance, and then hopefully provide the training so that the utility will be able to remain in compliance and make sure that those the PCE benefits do flow through the community. Another mechanism that was put into place in 2010 legislation was the Emerging Energy Technology Fund. And it was a realization that in Alaska, and in particular in rural Alaska, there may be technology that is ready to come out of the lab and to be put into production in a trial situation that might produce power at a cost that in the lower 48, it makes no sense. It would produce power at a cost that nobody would want to buy the power in the lower 48. But in Alaska, because of the high cost of power, we might have the sort of the perfect incubation system actually where we can roll some of that technology out, put it into application in a village setting. It might generate power at 25 to 30 cents per kilowatt hour. Again, in the lower 48, that might not make any sense. But in a community where the alternative is diesel-fired generation that produces power at 50 cents or 60 cents, then that technology may make absolute sense in that community. So it allows us to basically come forward with the grants that are issued through this program to shoulder some of that risk. We understand that the small utilities in most of your villages cannot take that risk of the technology actually penciling out and actually giving it that trial. Through this grant program, the state is actually willing to underwrite that risk work with you, the small utilities, to test out that new technology, see what makes sense. If in fact it proves itself up, then we would be looking to work with the manufacturer to roll that out more widely spread in the communities. Just a couple of last slides here. Along with House Bill 306 was Senate Bill 220 then. A lot of the actual programs were contained in Senate Bill 220. House Bill 306 really established the policy, so the direction that we are going with the state of Alaska with regards to energy, who is to derive that policy, who is to coordinate that policy amongst the state agencies, and then Senate Bill 220 came through and actually established the Emerging Energy Technology Fund and some of the other things that I've delivered. So it really was an example of the House and the Senate breaking the issue into two components, working on it simultaneously, but in conjunction with each other. So ultimately, not only was the policy advanced, but then on the programmatic side, they actually put things in place to implement the policy. Again, on Thursday, I'm going to be going over the new challenge that was handed to AEA this year. Again, looking at the potential revenue stream off a natural gas pipeline and how a benefit from that energy infrastructure that will benefit all the communities along that corridor can actually be accrued to the rural parts of the state that don't have direct access to the energy that would be delivered off that pipeline. A mechanism has been put in place. AEA has been challenged with working with communities and developing the plan, suggested programs to take to policymakers to implement so that when that revenue stream presents itself, we are ready to put it to good use and drive it into programs that benefit you. Although we are very hopeful that we are moving forward on a large gas pipeline, and all signs show that we are making very good incremental progress there, that project could be delayed for a number of years. And so whatever programs we develop through this new effort and this new charge by the legislature, we want it to also be instructional for the way that we operate our current programs, again, to look to get the biggest benefit for each of the energy dollars that we spend in the state. So thank you very much. I'm not sure if we've got time or not.
Nope.
Nope.